Welcome to Instruction Discussion, our weekly look at the latest topics and trends in education affecting schools here on Long Island and schools around the world. Whether you're a teacher, parent, or student, listen for tips and strategies to help you navigate the educational landscape. There's a bell. It's time to start today's Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, I'm Kevin Boston Hill, and welcome to Instruction Discussion, where each week we will examine a recent trend or development in education and its impact on Long Island. We are all aware of just how important learning in a STEM environment is. Just look at how fast AI is growing. Students are always being encouraged to pursue a STEM career, regardless of gender or socioeconomic background. One way to coax students towards STEM careers is by getting them involved with NASA's TechRise Student Challenge. Managed by NASA's Flight Opportunities Program and administered by Future Engineers, the challenge invites teams of 4 or more students under the guidance of an educator to design science and technology experiments for suborbital flight. To explain more about the program and discuss the implications of a STEM education, today we welcome NASA Flight Opportunities Program Manager Danielle McCulloch. Ms. McCulloch, welcome to Instruction Discussion on 90.3 WHPC.
Thanks so much for having me here today. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I think this is a great program to get students really involved in engineering and designing. So let's get into it. Tell us, what is the TechRise Student Challenge and how long has it been in existence?
Yeah, so this is the 3rd year of the NASA TechRise Student Challenge. And this is a competition that NASA put together to enable students to have an experience very similar to professional researchers and think about a problem that they would like to solve or that they could study using suborbital vehicles. So NASA's Flight Opportunities Program helps researchers test technologies for space using suborbital vehicles, which are high-altitude balloons, rocket-powered vehicles, and there are a variety of different types of vehicles, but these allow testing of technologies prior to them going on space missions and allow scientific research. And so we wanted to give students that same experience. So students in grades 6 through 12 can apply to be part of the NASA TechRise Student Challenge. They propose a problem or something that they'd like to study, and NASA will select 60 winning teams that get to fly their experiments. And those teams will receive a $1,500 prize to help them build their payload for flight, as well as an enclosure, a box that they can put their payload into. And they'll get a spot this year on either a rocket-powered lander or a high-altitude balloon. And through that whole process, our partner Future Engineers helps mentor them and make sure that they're ready for flight and help teach them the skills that they need to actually execute these experiments.
So let me get this straight then, just to clarify. So the same type of experiments that the astronauts are going through, that they're conducting on, let's say, the space station, the International Space Station, that's the type of program or the type of project that we want our students to develop. Obviously, they're not going into orbit, but they're going to be in suborbit in examining the results of their particular experiments that way.
Yeah, that's really kind of the right connection here. So some experiments go to the International Space Station and are tested there. Other experiments, we use small spacecraft that orbit around the world, around the Earth, or other types of vehicles. And so in this case, our researchers with our program test out those technologies before they go on to other types of missions using suborbital flight test. Or they use these tests on balloons or rocket-powered vehicles that don't go into orbit to help understand different phenomena and study different things. So for example, researchers might use high-altitude balloon flights to understand the atmosphere or climate, or do some analysis of things going on Earth. And that's a really powerful platform for them. And students can design experiments to do something very similar, probably a slightly smaller scale than some of our researchers do, but they go through the same process of thinking about an idea that they would like to pursue, building the hardware and getting it ready for flight, and thinking about how that technology is going to interface with the flight vehicle so that the experiment can be conducted in this case, autonomously or on its own, because as you said, no people will be flying on these flights. And then after the flight is done, they analyze their results and see what happened.
So now what actually will determine whether is going to be a hot air balloon or a low altitude balloon, high altitude balloon rather, or a rocket powered vehicle? Because I think that the type of vehicle would also have some impact on the experiment itself.
You're absolutely right. And so students get to pick which vehicle they would like to propose to for the competition.
Okay. I thought maybe that was decided ahead of time, that you have to design your project to go on this particular vehicle, but they get to choose which vehicle they want. Okay.
That's correct. Yep. So we have, there are 60 spots on these flights that will be split between the two vehicles, and the students get to choose which one they would like to propose to. So
it doesn't have to be in even numbers. So we don't have to have 30 for the balloon and 30 for the rocket. It can be any numbers. Like it might be 59 for the balloon and 1 for the rocket. It depends on what the students suggest.
Yeah, in this case, actually, half of the winning slots are on balloons and half are on rockets. But the students get to choose which platform they'd like to propose their technology or their experiment for.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that the challenge is open to basically any middle and high school student, but do they have to be in the same school or in a school to participate? Can they be part of, say, an after-school program or a community-based organization?
So all of the rules are outlined on the challenge website, but generally speaking, students need to be at a U.S. public, private, or charter school, and including U.S. territories. And there needs to be at least 4 students per team, as you mentioned earlier, and they have to be under the guidance of an educator. So this program is connected to schools as opposed to other entities that might have kind of after-school programs or something. But in many communities, they've been very creative about how they connect different resources from the community back to the school so that they can meet the requirements of the challenge.
Do students have to have some type of scientific or technical knowledge in order to participate?
Absolutely not. That's one of the things that we think is really neat about this program, is that there is so much support for the students and the teams. So all a team needs to propose is an idea. And on the TechRise website, there are a ton of resources that help students think about ideas and generate ideas, as well as some sample experiments that they can use to think about, gosh, what does this process look like? So all you need is just an idea. And it's a written proposal. You don't need to know anything about programming or microcomputers or hardware, which are pieces of these payloads that the students will learn about later if they don't have experience. And there are a ton of resources for educators as well to help them guide the students, in addition to the support that they get for future engineers. In addition to that, it's not just students who are interested in science or engineering that can really get a lot out of this. There are a lot of other pieces to the puzzle of putting together a payload. There's the talking about it, the communication piece of it to the other people at the school, and working on writing to put a proposal together. There's a lot of teamwork involved. And so a lot of students who have leadership skills, but maybe not quite as much interest in engineering or science, can really get a true STEM experience out of this, even if it's not them doing that very technical work. So there's really a place for almost any student at any level of expertise at this point in time, even if they have very little experience with work like this in the past.
Right. I was going to say that this sounds like the type of project and program that would really lend itself to anyone who is into developing their leadership skills, because now you have to organize a team and get everybody to work on their particular part and then bring those pieces together in order for the overall whole to work out. And especially if you have a strong writer, because not everybody, let's face it, not everybody can write or write the way that it would take to write a proposal. And so if you have a strong writer on your team, again, who may not necessarily be technically minded, that would be a help. And so you can almost bring in people who are experts in particular areas and pull those people together, those students together, and not necessarily have 4 or 5 science people, but you have two science people, one liberal arts person, an English person, and so forth, so that you really get a well-rounded type of team.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think one of the things that people often forget about NASA is that we're really dependent on a lot of different skill sets to run the agency. And quite frankly, that's true for the space industry in general. And so if people have a passion for space but maybe don't find themselves inclined to do engineering or more technical work, there's really a spot for them in this ecosystem. And we encourage students to get exposure to that early on.
Now, I know we said that this program is pretty much sponsored by NASA. So, and people hear NASA as, oh my God, it's so important. But just how involved are the scientists from NASA within this program, and will students and their educators really get the support directly from NASA, or is it from someplace else?
So the whole program is designed so that the support that students need, they can largely get from the program. Now, that doesn't mean that other people in their communities and other resources locally don't sometimes pitch in if there is access to that. But there are a couple of different pieces to this. So on the front end, as students are considering applying, we actually have something that we call our virtual field trip. And this will be on September 29th. And this is where students and educators can come together and hear from NASA experts and learn about the high altitude balloons and the rocket powered landers. So it's a really great exposure to NASA and all of the elements of this program, and to hear from some of those people that are intimately involved on a daily basis with doing flight tests like this. There are also other places along the way where students get access to NASA experts. And then on top of that, NASA, working with its future engineers teams, ensures that the students have access to engineers and scientists that really understand how to conduct flight tests and how to build the hardware and the payloads that will fly that these students are working on.
Now, I know we said that the students would not be able to necessarily accompany their projects in flight, but how close can they get? So with it, let's say, first of all, where would the flights take off from?
Yeah, so
or is that top secret?
It is not top secret. One of the flight providers is Astrobotic, and they typically do their flights in Mojave in California. And then Worldview Corporation is doing the other flights. And the location for those flights, I believe, is still to be determined, but somewhere in the southwest portion of the country is typically where they fly. So
I have a team here in New York, and we put our project together. We've been approved and been accepted. So now we have this project ready to go. How do I get it to the flight segment?
Yeah, so that's the other thing that's really neat about this is the logistics are all very smooth. So the application period is open until October 20th. In early July of 2024, that's when the teams that have been selected to build payloads will be announced. Then the students spend the winter and spring building their payloads, and late April, early May is when they will send those payloads off to Future Engineers. And Future Engineers is kind of our logistics provider for this. So they make sure that all of those payloads are tested before flight, making sure that they all work as expected before they actually get on their mission. Then Future Engineers actually gets those payloads to the flight providers. And then those flights are actually streamed for the students so that they can see their payloads take off and land and get some input and feedback from the flight providers and their staffs that are running those flights. So that's a way that we can keep the entire cohort of students that are involved engaged with each other. And they also have a variety of meetings along the way where they're getting mentoring together and kind of get to be a cohort and see what it's like, what their fellow students are doing as they're building their payloads too, which is another neat part of the whole process.
You are listening to Instruction Discussion on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Kevin Boston Hill, and our guest today is NASA Flight Opportunities Program Manager Danielle McCulloch, talking about the NASA TechRise program. It sounds like there's a lot of time between the finished product that my team here in New York would finish, and by the time it actually goes up on one of these flights. So what would we have to take care of to make sure that the experiment is still viable by the time it actually does go up?
Yes, so there are guidelines that are provided to each of the student teams just to make sure that their payload will be ready for flight. So as I mentioned, at the end of the spring is typically when those payloads get shipped by the students to Future Engineers, and then Future Engineers does their testing and sends them on to the flight provider. And the flights for this upcoming TechRise challenge are slated for summer of 2024. So there's not a long period of time, but for example, this is one of the reasons that biological experiments are not allowed. And so we really try to think about things that do, like you said, have some robustness and some longevity and aren't too overly fragile so that they can withstand the rigors of the flight test. And the students are given a lot of guidance as they go along, as they're building their payloads, to make sure that they're going to be sturdy enough. Because as you might imagine, for example, on a rocket-powered lander, things get awfully jiggly.
Yeah.
And so we wouldn't want payloads shaking apart. And so those payloads are tested, and they're given a lot of guidance to make sure that they can withstand the different environmental conditions that they'll face during flight test.
And I would also imagine that you would want to make sure that just the experiments in the boxes are sturdy, because if the students would want to get those back. And so,
yes, exactly.
but there's not necessarily a guarantee that they would get the experiments are retrievable once they've been conducted and they've been set into orbit.
So in this case, that's one of the advantages of suborbital flight tests. So again, where there's a flight test that exposes a technology to various conditions without going into orbit. And one of the advantages is that the researchers typically get their payloads back. So our expectation is that all of the students will get their payloads back from these flight tests.
Now, I know that you have that $1,500 that is given to the teams that are selected, the 60 teams that are selected. Can teams supplement that money from other sources that they may have in their communities?
So they can, but this is one area where we actually give some guidance to students. Generally speaking, we're looking for these payloads to be fairly low cost and relatively easy to build. And quite frankly, that's very similar to the Flight Opportunities approach to flight testing. So the ethos of our program at Flight Opportunities is we use commercial flight providers. So those are companies that have various vehicles to test technologies that are important for NASA. And we like to do this as quickly as possible, because the sooner you can find out if your technology works or what some of the challenges might be, the faster you can get it into a mission and really helping do some of the exploration that we want to do here at NASA. And so we'd like the students to learn the same thing. And so, doing low cost, rapid technology development and experiment development is really important for them to learn. And so, there's no hard cap on the cost of a payload, but that is actually part of the judging criteria, is how a team wisely uses their budget to build an efficient payload.
And I think that would also help to kind of level the playing field, if you will, so that, because there may be some communities that do have, like some high schools have partnerships with local colleges and would have access to their material, their resources and so forth, whereas other communities don't. So I think that way would also be a way to kind of level that playing field.
That's exactly right. And actually, diversity of participants is really important to us in TechRise. So we actually have 20 regions across the country to ensure geographic distribution of participants. And we actually also happen to have a bit of a focus on Title I schools to help with some of that economic diversity. And like you said, leveling the playing field, because we really do want a wide range of students to have access to an opportunity like this. And so you're exactly right. That's one of the reasons that we encourage students through the judging criteria to keep the budget of their payload within that $1,500 prize amount.
Now, I know you said this is the third year that this program, this challenge has been in existence. But from either in years past, from winters past, or even in the future, are there any plans on perhaps getting, maybe hiring or potentially hiring some of these winners to maybe to internships at NASA or something like that?
Yeah, so that's actually a great point. So when we are talking to the students, whether it's at the virtual student field trip, which is before anybody has even applied in most cases, or at some of the other student events we do, we try to provide information to students about ways to get engaged with NASA through internships or other opportunities, other challenges, competitions, or ways that they can get engaged with building either payloads or conducting experiments. And there are so many different ways that students can do that. And so, yeah, we definitely encourage students and provide them with information about how they can pursue opportunities at NASA and in the space ecosystem as a whole.
Now, I know that many of the informational deadlines have already passed because things have been moving since, August, I believe. So how can someone get a hold of some of that information that they might actually need? Were any of those sessions recorded? Where can they go to see those recordings?
Yeah, the best place to go is the competition website, which is futureengineers.org/NASA TechRise. And there are a number of things that are recorded there. There's a competition overview video. There are resources for both students and educators, and just a whole slew of different resources there. You can see all of the upcoming dates there. We do have some education sessions. Some of those things are recorded so that they're there for anybody to get access to. So that is the best place to go for all of that information. Again, that's futureengineers.org/NASA TechRise.
And I know, again, this is a project or a competition that goes for several months, really. If you're starting now in September and it will go through the summer. And we know that children and students, their ideas and attentions vary. So is it possible, will teams be able to kind of change their team members as they go through the competition period?
Yes, so we require a minimum of 4 students on a team, but if additional students want to join in, that is no problem. Each team just needs to have 4 students and an educator. One of the reasons that we structure the competition like we do is to make sure that we can get through the whole cycle in one academic year. So the applications happen in the fall, the selections are made in the winter, students build their payload in the beginning of the calendar year, and then those flights happen in the summer. And that helps to make sure that a student can get the full experience within that one academic year.
So I think that's very important to note that. And then, of course, once they get selected, it's up to them to decide when they're meeting and where they're meeting and what their particular schedule is, as long as it fits within the deadlines that are prescribed by the TechRise competition.
That's exactly right. Each team gets to do it their own way.
That sounds really good. So in your experience, again, in the last 2 years, I guess, of this challenge, what have been some of the winning proposals?
Yeah, so there's been a whole wide range of technologies, and students can actually find information about the winning technologies in the past on our website. It might spur ideas for them. But we've had students that have thought about different types of technologies that might help astronauts during long missions. A lot of emphasis on climate and the atmosphere and different types of monitoring, as well as different types of navigation technologies or investigating the effect of the atmosphere on materials. So it really is a whole wide range of experiments. And that's one of the most fun things for me, is to see this breadth of creativity that students have, that they really come up with just amazing ideas for things that can be investigated in these environments and tested. And it's really, really exciting to see their creativity come through.
So if a student or if a group comes up with an idea, they come up with an experiment, does that experiment have to be focused on, or does that experiment have to only deal with one test, or can they have multiple tests with the same experiment to test different things?
Yeah, it's really up to the students. And, so each flight has sort of a flight profile and what what it will experience, what the experiment will experience during that flight. And all that information is provided on the TechRise website. And so students just need to think about, how much can they fit into this box? And it's actually called a 2-unit. So it's about the size of a shoebox that they're building their payload in. So they don't have a lot of space, and they have a mass constraint as well as only so much power that they can get. So they have to figure out within those constraints, what can they do? And so in some cases, a more simplistic experiment makes more sense for them. In other cases, some students might try to do 2 or 3 things over the course of that flight. And either way is okay. It really just depends on what the students are trying to do and how they want to design their payload.
And once again, where can people go to get more information on this opportunity or any other opportunity that may be out there sponsored by NASA?
Yes, so the best place to find information about the TechRise Student Challenge is at futureengineers.org/NASA TechRise. And that website will also point you to a number of different resources as well. So that is the best place to start.
If you had, because I'm just giddy about these types of things because I wish this was available when I was growing up, because I may have gone into engineering. Now, I didn't like the math part of it so much, but I may have still found some other place in engineering because of programs like this. So what would you say, or if you had one idea to leave our audience with about opportunities like the TechRise program, TechRise Challenge, or STEM opportunities in general, what would that thought be?
I think the most exciting thing for me is that students get to engage in this process of coming up with an idea, trying to build something, facing the challenges and sometimes even failures that come along with that process, and really persevering to get to the end of, in this case, a payload that can fly, and having the satisfaction of doing that and really being able to be hands-on with all of that. Now, even for the students that apply and don't win a slot within this year's TechRise Student Challenge, it's still a great experience for them to go through that whole thought process, to engage with NASA and try. So in our program, we have this ethos of fly, fix, fly. And a lot of times the technologies that we send on these flight tests don't work as expected, but that's what we're looking to do, is learn about that. And then we can go back and try again. And so proposing is the same way, as is building a TechRise payload. You try once, some things might not work quite right, and you come back and try again, either in TechRise or some other opportunity. And it's just so exciting to see students engage with that.
Wow. We would certainly like to thank our guest today, NASA Flight Opportunities Program Manager Danielle McCulloch, for coming on to our show today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And once again, my name is Kevin Boston Hill, and thank you all for listening to Instruction Discussion right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.